The one person that the narcissist is dependent upon is you, the victim. Now, I understand that the narcissists typically have many victims at one time. So when we say one person, we mean the victim, whoever that is, but there could be many victims. You understand what I'm saying. So let's ask ourselves this question. The narcissist is dependent on you, but he or she wants you to be dependent on him or her. So what would that be? Wouldn't we call that codependence, where we're dependent on each other? Yeah, I think it is, and that's the kind of relationship the narcissist wants you to be in, so he or she can kind of bind you, catch you in their web of deceit. How does this happen? Well, we need to understand, number one, we got 4 points here, but number one is the narcissist will invalidate you so he or she can validate you. Let's make sense of that, because really it's not that complicated. Let's say that you're going to build a new house, or new anything, but we'll say a new house. Got some property, it's kind of nice, but there's some trees, you got to move those trees. Well, there's some landscaping that has to be done. You need to maybe, if you're going to put in a basement, got to move some earth. If you're going to put in a crawl space, you need to move some earth. Even if you're going to have a foundation that's just solid concrete, still you got to do some moving. So you got to get rid of the old stuff to put in the new stuff. Same thing with invalidation to validate. Got to get away of the current validation to put in the new validation. So they got to invalidate you to validate you. That basically is the fundamental underpinning, speaking of foundations, of thought reform. Take away the old. Remember, we used that illustration in the past about using clay, modeling clay when you're in first, second grade, whatever, and you mush it up. You got to mess it up first, because before you make something out of it. That's what the narcissist does to your validation. They want to make you feel invalidated. They want to make you feel dependent. Talk about that some more. Dependent on the narcissist. So first, you got to get rid of your dependency on yourself. Okay, so now you are dependent on the narcissist. Why? Because, well, they love bomb you, they groomed you, they brought you into their sphere. You think this is a great person. They've totally, absolutely pulled the wool over your eyes. But what is going on is the narcissist invalidates you, so now he is she is validating rather you. And when they do that, that validates the narcissist, because by controlling you, they feel validated. So we have this codependency. We could even call it co-validation. You need the narcissist to validate you because they manipulated you through the love bombing. And the narcissist needs you to validate himself or herself. And they control you by validating you. So we would say they need to control you. They need to control you to be validated. That is the essence of being a narcissist. That supply, that ego-boosting supply, ego-inflating supply. They get their ego boost by controlling you, and they control you by taking away your validation and devaluating you, and then revaluating you by making you think that you need this person. Co-validation. I made that term up. It's not clinical. You can look it up. Maybe somebody else thought of it. So how do you know? Well, after the love bombing stage and all the fake crap is over and the narcissist starts to invalidate you, and this is, by the way, a continual cycle. They're constantly invalidating you, so you will go back for more validation. Does that make sense? So it's cyclical, over and over and over again. They will criticize you, and then they will praise you. They will criticize you, so you'll be hungry, thirsty for some praise, and then they will say something kind to you. And then they will invalidate you, and then they will praise you a little more. Now, the invalidation, at least in my experience, other people may have different experiences, but my experience has been that the invalidation is like 10-to-1 validation. They really put you down and beat you so that you will be starving for the least little compliment, which usually comes in the form not of a compliment, but just not invalidating you, So let's say that you are dependent on somebody to feed you. And how are you going to get them to do that? Well, you pay them compliments or you berate them. You berate them and they feel bad and they really want a compliment Well, you compliment when they bring you food. You know, it's kind of like Pavlov's dogs. They learn to get the compliment or to put an end to the invalidation, however you want to put it. They've got to respond. That's how a narcissist keeps us entangled. That's how cults keep people entangled. The invalidation validation cycle. So the narcissist number 2 is a narcissist always calls the shots. So this is the way you know that the cycle is in full swing. Have you ever been in a place where you're in a narcissistic relationship and you're wanting to please the narcissist? Now, I'm not talking about love relationship where it's genuine and it's real, or a genuine real friend, but it's where it's not so much you're doing it because you love somebody. It's because you feel like you have to do it. You got to please the narcissist or this person, or else you're going to face the wrath of whatever. Now, it's perfectly logical and reasonable, say if you're married, to want to please your spouse. That's not narcissism, that's not codependency, that's not co-validation, that's called love and respect. But when you do it because you feel like you have to do it because you will be abused if you don't do it, you're under this constant threat, kind of like a drill sergeant. You know, got to make the drill sergeant happy so he doesn't yell at me. The reward is he doesn't yell at you. I mean, it's not like he pats you on the head and praises you for doing something. Maybe the drill sergeant does that. Typically, they don't. They reward you by not being mean to you. That is how a narcissist will typically reward people. They just be passive. So they go through these, these two stages. They're mean, hostile, angry, sometimes abusive physically, and then they're not. So you want to get back to that stage where they're not. So you're constantly trying to please these people. That is something you really need to get out of. That's a situation where you're constantly walking on eggshells, trying desperately not to offend this person. Why in the world would you want to be in a relationship like that? Well, I wouldn't. I mean, why would you want to be dependent on somebody like that? And it's also evident through just self-doubt, that you can't do it on your own. You really need this narcissist. And you may not even know the person is a narcissist, but you gotta have this person out. There's nothing wrong with being dependent on good people for a good reason. Particularly if you're a kid, you got parents, you're dependent on your parents. If you're married, you have a spouse, and you depend on your spouse for different things. My wife and I, we have some people call them gender roles if you want, but basically I mow the grass, and I do some work around the house, not a lot. Less than I used to because of physical problems, but there are things my wife does, that I don't do. I could do them, and sometimes I do. I help out around the house cleaning sometimes and do some of those things. I do the laundry sometimes, but, that's kind of her thing, but her job really is keeping the schedule, among other things, and keeping track of medications. You get older, you got to take meds. Or die, one or the other. So, she has her role. So we have this codependency, but it's a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's not slave master. It's not puppeteer. It's, it's a partnership where we actually do it, we like to do it, and we get along together. That is a form of codependency that is, I think, healthy and perfectly normal, but that's not the kind you have with a narcissist. Well, number 3 is this. Well, let's go back over. Number 1 is you invalidate to validate. So the narcissist tears you down to rebuild you. Number 2, narcissist calls the shots. Number 3 is you become very dependent. Now, you need to display, from a narcissist perspective is what we're talking about, but you need to display dependency on the narcissist. He wants to make sure that you are not independent, that the relationship is you give and they take. That's it. You do what they want you to do, always. They never do what you want to do. You always have to get their approval. You have to ask their permission, maybe not verbally, but implicitly. They're always in control. Well, what happens if you're not dependent? Well, they get a little testy. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic. A lot of times they just fly off the handle. Depends on the individual. But, I've heard so many horror stories of people who had abusive spouses or maybe parents. I mean, they were physically abusive and verbally abusive. And they would totally destroy these people who are dependent on them, and it was all, a big ego boost. That's all it was, just getting supply out of people. What a horrible... Stop and think about this. How horrible must it be to be dependent on the people that you were abusing? That you need those people to abuse so that you can have a sense of self-worth, so you can have a sense of, an inflated ego. That's terrible, terrible existence, but a lot of people are suffering that. I mean, people are suffering from the person who is like that. So everything you do is wrong. You ever been around someone like that? Yeah, that's probably why you're watching the channel. You have been around people like that. Whatever you do, they can find something wrong with it. Doesn't matter how good it is, and doesn't matter how right it is. I mean, if you accidentally spill something, it's a major catastrophe. You've heard the thing, don't cry over spilled milk. Narcissists don't cry over it. They scream over it, and you cry over it because in some cases they become hostile. But you don't have to spill milk. You just can do nothing. They'll complain about you doing nothing. And so they will, whatever you do is wrong, or whatever you do is a joke, or both. Narcissists love to abuse people. They love to take people and invalidate them by ridiculing them, particularly in front of other people, because that really, really gives them supply. That really inflates their ego. Number 4 is this, and this brings everything in full circle. That is, the narcissist really needs you for validation. The narcissist needs you and other people that he or she is abusing for validation. And when you leave, the narcissist loses that validation. But you're dependent because you are dependent on the narcissist for validation. And if you can break that dependency, if you can realize once and for all that you really don't need this person in your life. In fact, your life would be so much better off if you didn't have this person in your life. And break away and be free. I got to tell you, it's not easy, particularly if you're related to the person. If you're a spouse or, it's immediate family, or even if it's a distant relative. Because you can't totally, absolutely, positively break the contact. A lot of times, if it's a distant relative or a distant friend, they still trying to make contact with your immediate family because they want access to you. They want to feel like they are still in control of you. That's a tough one. But still, we talk about it often. Go gray rock, dead horse. Go ahead, beat me if you want, but I'm just not here. Ghost. Just disappear. Be the invisible man. So you see there are 2 rectangles on the screen. If you want our conversation to continue, all you got to do is click one of those 2 rectangles. But if not, thanks for stopping by, and we will see y'all next time.